Fight fans worldwide, whoever you are and wherever you are, thank you for watching. My name is HB, alongside my brother Breezy, and this is The Hard Hitting Truth. This is a podcast by boxers to give you an unfiltered, unbiased look at the sweet science we love so much. Joining us tonight on the show is Adonis, a young sports broadcaster in the making, and we got a lot to talk about. So before we go any further, please, if you haven't already, subscribe to us on YouTube. You can also follow us on Facebook and Instagram at thht.boxing. Also, if you love this video, please give it a thumbs up, leave some feedback for us in the comments, and most importantly, hit the share button, tell your friends to tell their friends about the hard-hitting truth. Breezy, my brother.
Yes,
it's
sir.
on you.
Ding, ding.
All right. Adonis, how you doing? Got a few things to talk about.
Feeling good tonight, man. Feeling good tonight, man.
All right. Yeah. I didn't want to talk to Breezy without checking in with you too. So got a few things to talk about. First and foremost, I don't know about you guys, but I'm still pretty much on a good boxing high from the Deontay Wilder Tyson Fury fight that went down 2 weeks ago.
Yeah. There's
nothing like a real deal, authentic boxing rivalry to really get the blood pumping, So ever since then, man, I've been on that high. There's been a lot of great fights going on this month, and there's a ton of great fights next month. You got Canelo Plant. Yeah. You have Rosado versus Munguia. You have Uzcategui versus Benavidez. You have. Are you ready, Breezy? You know where I'm going next, right?
Mm-hmm.
Going to your boy.
I know where you're going.
Terrence Bud Crawford.
Yeah.
And ladies and gentlemen, if you did not know, my man Breezy here is the self-proclaimed president of the Bud Crawford fan club. So we got Bud Crawford versus Showtime Sean P. So it's all up. And man, thank you to Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder for setting the tone.
Yeah.
Boxing's up. Recently, not too recently, but fairly recently on Undisputed with Skip and Shannon, I heard Skip saying that, or Skip was debating or trying to debate whether or not Tom Brady, quarterback for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers currently, heading back to Foxborough to face Bill Belichick and the New England Patriots, is one of the greatest rivalry games of all time. And I'm just like, man, it's not a rivalry. You know what I mean? Like, there are no greater rivalries than boxing rivalries. I don't care about Tom Brady versus the Patriots. It's not a real rivalry. This is, we're coming to you live from the Chicagoland area over here in this corner. It's like the Bears versus the Packers. It's supposed to be a rivalry, but I feel like a lot of players, especially on the Bears, haven't gotten the memo. You know what I mean? It's just not a, you know what I mean? At this point, like,
man, you don't got to do them like that. They're going through enough at this point, man.
Hey, Aaron did them like that. I didn't do anything to him. Hey, Aaron said he still owns them. At this point, I don't know how much of a rivalry it is. You know what I mean? It's like sometimes you see them out there. They don't really play like it's a rivalry. They don't play like they have like there's real bad blood between the organizations. There is no greater rivalries than boxing rivalries. So there's been a lot of debate of whether or not the Tyson Fury versus Deontay Wilder rivalry, and where it ranks amongst all the rivalries in boxing history. So tonight we're going to talk about a few of our favorites. But first, I'll ask the question, and I'll turn it over to Breezy first. Breezy, what do you think the Tyson Fury versus Deontay Wilder rivalry ranks in boxing history?
Ooh, where does it rank?
You don't have to put a number on it either. Like,
Okay, well, good.
High or
good.
low.
Thank you. You saved me.
Yeah, man.
High up. It ranks high up. It ranks high up because it's got everything. It's got some beautiful boxing. It's got action. It's got a storyline. You know, they fought 3 times. It's really up there. I mean, I haven't had watching that trilogy fight. I hadn't had that feeling in a while. You know, each fight might affect me a little differently, but that was something special. It felt good, especially in a year like this. You know, it was a big one. You know, so yeah, definitely up there. Top 10ish. If I
Top
could put a
10ish?
little
Okay.
bit of a number on there, top 10ish rivalry.
That's a decent gauge. I'll give you that. Adonis, what about you? What do you think? Is the Tyson Fury versus Deontay Wilder rivalry? Does it rank up there with you or down there with you?
I think it's got to rank up there purely for the fact that, I mean, like Breezy was saying, we haven't felt like this in a while with a rivalry. Probably since, honestly, Pacquiao Mayweather. That was the last time we really had the same commercial and marketable rivalry like this in boxing. Now, you're going to get people out there that have their own little, like, real hardcore rivalries that have happened in the past 10 years. And hey, I'm not trying to hate on that. But at the end of the day, the most people, I mean, I have friends that don't watch boxing that were asking me all week long the other week about Deontay Wilder, Tyson Fury. And I haven't had that in literally a decade. So when you look at that, right, I mean, it's
That's
true. I mean, especially with the younger generation, right? Like, they don't, I will say boxing has fallen off a little bit with people my age. But when you see a fight that can break through the mold of all the media and the social media and comes in like that, where everybody cares about it, I think it has to be up there.
Yeah, for me, it's up there also, simply for the fact that there aren't that many heavyweight boxing rivalries. So I think this is the 5th one all time. So I think by default it's in the top 5 of heavyweight boxing rivalries. So it's up there with me for some of the reasons that Breezy said. It had a little bit of everything, different boxing styles, a good contrast of styles. They always say styles make fights. So you have the power puncher versus the more refined boxer, which is always a great matchup of styles. Not only that, but their matchup produced great, entertaining fights and close fights. Whether or not you want to argue that they were close or not close, you still got to argue that point. It had a little controversy, weird headlines, but most importantly, it had authentic bad blood. And you could tell right away when they were getting ready when they were at the center of the ring before the first bell, while the referee was giving his final instructions, man, you could cut the tension in the air with a butter knife, even if you were just standing in your own living room instead of being at the T-Mobile Arena. It was that type of fight. It was that type of atmosphere. I could feel it in my living room. So,
yeah,
you have real boxing rivalries when you have two men standing at the center of the ring who look like they do not want to touch gloves. And that's exactly what this fight was. So I gotta, since we're going to talk about rivalries for a little bit, I'm going to turn it over to Adonis first. What's your favorite boxing rivalry?
So for me, this is what I grew up on. I was born in 2001. So this rivalry is kind of like the mark of my childhood in boxing. Manny Pacquiao versus Juan Manuel Marquez. Those 4 fights for me, I mean, growing up as a tiny little boxing fan, that's what shows you how great boxing can be overall. And not just greatness, but the parity in between fights is kind of what makes that rivalry for me. I remember the first one, I was a little bit too young. I was a little bit too young. The second one, I kind of remember. The third one was the one that really got me because I remember being so angry that Juan Manuel Marquez didn't get the decision. Everybody I grew up around with, I had a lot of Mexican boxing fans that I grew up around with. So I remember when that controversy came around, that's what really, you ever get that one memory from when you're like a child? You're like, oh, this is when I started thinking. This is my first memory. That was one of my first boxing memories,
Yeah.
So with that, and then knowing the history behind it, and then going back and watching those fights, and then for Juan Manuel Marquez to finally get his redemption in the 4th fight after all the controversy, after all the close fights, you don't really get to see a better storyline than that over 4 fights in boxing.
Yeah, that's true. I have to agree with you. just because I know exactly where I was watching the third fight and the fourth fight, and I could still recall the feelings that I felt. Man, I got goosebumps a little bit right now just talking about it. The third fight,
Yeah.
here's a good story for you, because the third fight, I was watching it in Manila with a couple of my boxing trainers. First was Johari Rosario, who taught me how to box. He was the first man to teach me how to box. What's up, Johari? I'm there with him and Benji Concepcion, whose brother Abe Concepcion was signed to Top Rank right around the same time period. So we're watching the fight. We were at what's the name of that place? Mega Mall. We were at Mega Mall watching this in Metro Manila, and midway through the fight, I just tapped Johari, just to see if he was seeing what I'm seeing, and I said, Johari, who do you have winning the fight? Without hesitation at all, he was like, Marquez. Marquez was getting down, man. Like, and it was undeniable. The theater was super silent. You could hear an ant walking across carpet. It was that quiet. And nobody made noise until the decision was read, and it came back with a decision for Pacquiao. But Pacquiao was bleeding from the eye. And it just looked like Marquez was on fire. He was landing double straights. He was landing lead uppercuts. It just looked like he couldn't miss. And then all of a sudden, the decision didn't go well. And you could see in Juan's face how upset he was. And when he got another crack at it, he took his anger. He put his anger to good use. Man, so yeah.
Dude, I will say, being in a Mexican household when that decision got read, I have not seen angrier people in a decade since then, dude. It was insane. And the other thing about that rivalry that made it so
I got
great.
one question. What's question. Up, what got broken?
Oh man, there are a few things, a few plates. I think there was a coffee table here and there. But the other great thing about that rivalry too is that with Deontay Wilder, Tyson Fury, England is a great boxing nation. America, we falter a little bit here. When you have two amazing boxing nations, the way Mexico and the Philippines are, that only adds to the fire of a rivalry like that. And not in like an especially like animalistic way, like volatile way, but you could just feel the passion between the two nations in all four of those fights. And when you have two guys fighting for a nation like that, you can see how that pushes them just a little bit harder.
Yeah, I have to agree with you. Boxing is huge in the Philippines, and boxing's obviously huge in Mexico. It's probably, in both of those countries, it's a top 3 sport, if not a top 2 sport. Where in America, it's not like that so much. Your top 3 sports are probably basketball, football, and baseball. And then you go into other things. So boxing kind of falls by the wayside a little bit more in the United States. So I hear where you're coming from with that point. Breezy.
Yeah, I just want to say about that Pacquiao Marquez rivalry. It was so good that Mexicans pretty much adopted Pacquiao. Like every Mexican I know loves Pacquiao. Like they're big.
Yeah, that was the weird thing about after that rivalry too. Is after it was over, I was the biggest Pacquiao fan of all time from that point on, and everybody I knew was too. So that just shows you when fights are that great, it doesn't matter about like the bad blood that happened beforehand. When you see two guys put on a performance like that, you just have to be fans of both of them at the end of the day.
Yeah. And you know what? That rivalry, a lot of people don't realize it, but it really did have bad blood. I don't think a lot of people realized it, but it did. Marquez, I met Marquez while they were doing press runs for their third fight. I met him in Manila. I was fortunate enough to meet him there, and I spoke a little broken Spanish to him. He spoke a little English to me, and I spoke to some of his team members and whatnot. And one of them told me that Marquez was truly upset at Pacquiao like there was real bad blood stemming from the fact that it wasn't easy for him to get a rematch. And, you know,
Mm.
it's kind of something that I feel was, a parallel in the Deontay Wilder versus Tyson Fury fight, because Deontay Wilder, had to go through great lengths to secure
Yeah.
this third fight. And that's where I feel like the bad blood really, really, really came from. I think that's when anger really started to kind of boil over. And that's certainly where it boiled over for Marquez. Marquez, from hearing it from one of his, somebody's mouth in his entourage, Marquez didn't like that one bit whatsoever. So he had really taken that to heart. And that's why after the fourth fight, Marquez never gave Manny a rematch. At least that's what I would assume, because he never did. He never had any interest from reading some of the articles that came out. He never really seemed to express any interest in giving him another fight. And if you guys are listening, that's why. Breezy, what about you? What's your favorite boxing rivalry?
Well, when you ask that question, the first thing that comes to mind, and it wasn't a trilogy, it wasn't even there wasn't even a rematch. But as far as rivalry, Mayweather versus Pacquiao, I feel
Mm,
like that's the first thing that comes to mind.
it was
There was a
big.
whole lot of bad blood. Really, you can go as far as to say it almost changed boxing, because now you got a lot more people taking Olympic style drug testing and trying to overextend to show how clean they are. And
Yeah,
that was really the start of it. Um, but then uh, it built up for years. There was a whole lot of hate and emotions going on, so much so that people still say Pacquiao won and the fight wasn't close. That's
it
how
was
much
not.
emotion was in it.
It was,
But it
yeah,
was it was just great. It built up for years. Obviously, it's did the biggest numbers of any fight ever.
ever.
And I think Pacquiao and Mayweather's name are linked as much as Ali and Frazier.
Yeah,
That's just
yeah,
the same vibe. When you talk about Pacquiao, you got to talk about Mayweather, and vice versa. And both of those fighters, most people have in their top 10 of all time. Both of them.
yeah.
So it's hard to beat that.
It really is. Yeah, honestly, it's funny that you guys chose these rivalries as your favorites, and you guys spoke about them in this order, because an interesting point that one could make is that we may have never seen Mayweather versus Pacquiao if Marquez didn't deliver the knockout of the year at the end of 2012. Because sometimes I used to sit back and think to myself that Manny is facing Marquez so many times just because they're not setting up the fight with Mayweather for whatever reason. And that's up to, that topic has been debated for all of eternity. So we're not going to do it here. But it, you could argue that if Marquez never knocked out Manny, then they may have never, Mayweather and Pacquiao may have never faced each other. They may have just went their separate ways, and their paths may have never, crossed. So
It could have played out that way. Maybe not. I didn't feel like the demand for Mayweather and Pacquiao to face each other didn't really come on strong until like after the second fight with Pacquiao and Marquez. Like right around that third fight, that was when people was like really starting to like maybe Pacquiao can be the guy to get Mayweather. And then obviously before the fourth fight, it was hot, and then he got knocked out, and that kind of changed
yeah,
things a little bit.
if you really think about it, Marquez and Pacquiao have their second fight, and then around that time, or shortly after that, Mayweather, or around that time, I can't really remember off the top of my head right now. Mayweather goes into retirement, and
Yeah.
stays in retirement until 2009. And when he comes out of retirement, he faces Marquez, and you could argue that he did that to send a message to Manny Pacquiao coming out of retirement, like, this is your rival. This is what I did to him. And because everybody wants us to fight now, this is what I'm going to do to you. And because he performed the way he did against Marquez with, almost a 2-year layoff and ring rust, it could be the reason why we didn't get to see that fight until the 11th hour. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So after the third fight, that's when after the third fight with Manny and Marquez, I remember they tried to negotiate the Mayweather Pacquiao fight again, and Bob Arum said the cut that Manny sustained in the third fight with Marquez was so bad that he wouldn't be able to face Mayweather that coming May. And so the Mayweather faced Kodo in May. Yeah. Too many Mays in a short span of time, man. Almost had to log off up here. Anyway, so that kind of segues me into my favorite rivalry, which is Kodo versus Margarito. Man, if you want bad blood, in a rivalry,
it's about as bad as it gets.
It's as real as it gets. For those that don't know the story, Margarito and Miguel Kodo faced each other right around, I want to say, 2008, when they were both undefeated welterweights. This was shortly after Mayweather had retired. So it was looking like Kodo was going to be the next guy at welterweight. He had just beaten Zab Judah and Shane Mosley, and he was on fire. He had great wins, and Margarito was, a classic, hard-nosed Mexican fighter. Press forward, relentless pressure, take one to give as many as you can give back. He was that type of fighter. And obviously, there's always been a big boxing rivalry between Mexico and Puerto Rico. So this fight had all of those elements. And then, two undefeated fighters, Mexico versus Puerto Rico, who's going to be the guy at welterweight in the post-Floyd Mayweather era. So it had all those elements, and the fight didn't disappoint. It was a great stylistic matchup, pressure fighter versus a guy who was kind of a boxer puncher. And the fight was kind of a seesaw fight that went back and forth. Great action between both of them. And I think it culminated in a either 10th or 11th round
11
TKO of Miguel Kodo. Fast forward a little bit in time, and I want to say it's Margarito's either his next fight or, 2 fights later, he fights Shane Mosley. And Nazim Richardson, Mosley's trainer at the time, rest in peace to Nazim, when he's in the locker room watching Margarito get his hands taped, he goes over to inspect him, and the gauze feels hard. And so he goes inside, and like a block comes out, and he's like, "What's this?" And they're like, "What's what?" And they had to rewrap his hands. I want to say they,
4 times.
Based on my remembrance of what Jim Lampley said during the HBO boxing broadcast, they had to rewrap Margarito's hands more than twice, I want to say. So that kicked off the bad blood, not only between Margarito and Kodo, but Margarito and Mosley. Mosley went out there and took it to somebody almost like I've never seen Mosley ever take it to anybody.
Yeah.
Mosley knocked out Margarito, and Margarito had an iron chin, and man, the fight wasn't even close. Margarito had almost, I don't remember any successful moments that Margarito had against Mosley. It was like a wash. And that kind of gave us the Mayweather Mosley fight. Mosley had that great performance that kind of, springboarded him into the ring with Mayweather after, the first round of negotiations between Mayweather and Pacquiao failed. And then you got Miguel Kodo, who's just kind of laying in the back, took a brutal beating from Margarito, and then finds out that in, either his next fight or, a few fights later, Margarito had loaded hand wraps. And Miguel Cotto, if he didn't get that rematch fight with him, it looked like he was so upset he might have taken it to the streets. You want to talk about bad blood in a rivalry fight or a rivalry period? It doesn't get any better than that. And Kodo went to war in the second fight, and the eye that Manny Pacquiao broke when Margarito finally got it reinstated after he got suspended from boxing for the loaded hand wraps. The eye that Manny Pacquiao broke, Kodo went ahead and tried to re-break it, and he may have. I'm not sure if he ever did. I don't remember the headlines, or the injury report, but it swole so shut. It got so swollen shut that it almost looked like two tires sitting on top of each other. Something out of the Rocky Balboa prop kit. Right. You know what I mean? That's my favorite, man. Not only because it was a rivalry with real bad blood and all the elements that you would love to see in a boxing rivalry, it had a good ending to the story for Miguel Cotto. Yeah, so that's my favorite, man.
I got an interesting take on that, or maybe an unpopular opinion, maybe. So obviously, you can make the case that Margarito cheated in their first fight with Kodo. Oh, but that's not a fact.
It's not a fact.
He was never caught in that fight. Obviously, he was the underdog going into that fight, and he basically broke Kodo. He took a knee. He had nothing left. He was beaten and fatigued. But
yeah,
I'm not so convinced that he did cheat in that fight. I'm not saying it's nothing he wouldn't do. I don't put it past him at all. But the reason why I say this is because the first fight and the second fight, if you go back and look at them, they were basically identical.
They were fairly similar.
It almost looked in the first, 5-6 rounds, it almost looked like Margarito didn't belong in the ring with Kodo. He was boxing beautifully, putting like beautiful punches together, not getting hit too much. You
talking about the first fight or the second fight?
Both of them. Both of them. Yeah. I watched them both a number of times, and I'm like, this is the same storyline. Like, you couldn't, like, if I just kind of broke it down vaguely round for round, you wouldn't know which fight I'm talking about. But Margarito was super tough. He weathered the storm and was coming on hard in those later rounds. Pressure and combinations and just an iron chin. It seemed like it was getting to Kodo. Kodo was really touched up in that second fight. So you look at him, he got all the same marks on his face. He was taking some punishment. The only difference is, like, I think what happens to be the common denominator in all of our favorite rivalries, which is Pacquiao. I think if Margarito didn't happen, Margarito might stop Pacquiao in the rematch. Because
that's an interesting point. Yeah,
he was definitely giving it to. He was ahead, and he was giving it to Margarito, but Margarito's coming on strong, and Kodo was fading. It was maybe a little stronger, but I really believe it would have went similar.
It's a good argument to make. I wouldn't fault you for it. You know what I mean? I wouldn't fault you for making an argument, but
it's real hard to give the guy that got caught loading hand wraps the benefit of the doubt,
Yeah.
Like when you get caught doing something like that, you're like, man, like,
I'm not. I agree.
Your goodwill has
I
passed.
don't want to give him that, point. But let's say he did.
Thank you, Adonis.
Let's say he did cheat in the first fight. It didn't change anything. If anything, he would have probably knocked him out sooner. But in the second fight, like, we know he didn't have the plaster of Paris in his gloves. And to me, it looked like it was the same thing, and it just got abruptly ended because his eye couldn't withstand the damage anymore.
But you know what? Honestly, though, I didn't feel like the tide was turning as much in the second fight as I did in the first fight. Like, in the first fight, I was like, uh-oh.
Yeah.
And during the second fight, I was just watching like, ooh, Margarito's not going quietly. But at no point was I like, uh-oh, this doesn't look good for Kodo. You know what I mean? But it was very stylistically, it was a very similar fight, and obviously the outcomes were different. And you're right. If it wasn't for the fact that Margarito had braids and Kodo had tattoos in the rematch, if you take that fact away,
Right.
it's hard to really say, oh, that's the first fight and oh, that's the second fight. It did look very similar, but just with two totally different outcomes. So,
Yeah.
that's my favorite boxing rivalry. I can go on and on about boxing rivalries. I think we all can. To your point, Adonis, one of the ones that really kind of like helped spark my interest even more so in boxing was Mike Tyson versus Lennox Lewis. That happened when me and I'm about to date us real quick. Breezy, you cool with that? It happened right
Yeah,
after
I'm
we
cool.
graduated from high school.
Damn, man.
Yeah,
Right after
after.
right after graduation. I remember being with a friend, and he was a little bit older. My man Fifth Element. What's up, Five? So he was a big Lennox fan. And after the fight, Lennox did his thing. It was a beautiful story of, boxer puncher versus the more aggressive power puncher, and who's going to win, the chess player versus the I don't know what you would call Mike, you know what I mean? Except, Iron Mike. So you got the chess player versus Iron Mike, the gentleman boxer versus Brooklyn. Who's going to win? And it didn't disappoint. It was a great fight. Mike lost, and I was riding around with this huge Lennox Lewis fan, and I went to Breezy. You remember Steve Radistis?
Yeah.
So I'm in Shiraju's car, and we go to. I'm like, yo, my friend Steve is having a graduation party. Let's go over there real quick. And the whole time he's screaming out the window, Lennox, bop bop. The whole time, windows down. I don't even think we had any music on. He's just going crazy. And we go over to Steve's house. The only thing Fifth Element kept saying was Lennox, buck, buck. And then when I just went over there to say what's up to Steve, and wish him luck with college and all that, and say hi to all our friends. And then on the way out, I remember Shiraju was so hyped up off of that fight. He grabbed a piece of cake with his bare hand and walked out of the party. And we got out to the car. He took one huge bite out of it, lifted up their trash can, threw it in there, and drove off. And we drove off into, I can't call it the sunset because the sun was long gone, but we drove off, and that was my night for that was my night for the night. Back
Lennox
back when I
Tyson.
was a young 17-year-old kid fresh out of high school. But that was a great rivalry just because that had, real bad blood and a little bit of everything. Controversy at the
He
press
bit him.
conference. He
He
bit
bit him.
Lennox at the press conference.
Yeah.
Great quotes. I want to eat your children. Great, man, it had everything. So I can go on and on about boxing. You guys got any more you want to drop in there?
I mean, we could really talk about Ali versus Liston. I mean, that's a throwback, but that was a
Yeah,
good
but we're not that
rivalry.
old.
I mean,
We're not that
I
old.
took it way back, but
Yeah.
the reason why I say
Honestly,
that because
if we do that, man, I could talk about Ali Frazier because I used to live in
yeah,
Manila, right around the corner from where Ali and Frazier fought, and I could talk about that for forever. It's like hallowed ground out there, But let's move on, man. Talking about rivalries, a good segue is, man, did you guys see the first episode of All Access? Canelo Alvarez versus Caleb Plant.
yeah,
Yeah, dude.
Hey,
Showtime does an amazing job of
they do.
storytelling. They are some of the best in the business in that department.
not only
They do.
just storytelling, we talking about the musical selections. Hey, All
Right.
Access, man.
They had the
Hey,
baby as Caleb
They
Plant
make
was
it
going
so
down Las Vegas, man. To say, come on, man.
dramatic.
hey, they All Access, Showtime with All Access is up there. They do a great job covering boxing period. You know, they inspire me on a constant basis. They did the Kings this year, the All Access series. Every time they do an All Access on whoever's fighting, whatever fight they got coming out, they do a tremendous job. So if you guys haven't seen it yet, go check it out. It's available on Show Sports, I believe, on YouTube, or obviously if you have, you can go to your cable provider, look for it on Showtime, record it, watch it, keep it on your DVR, whatever. Great, great episode, and it looks like we have another fight going down in about 2 weeks with some real, authentic bad blood between them. And if you guys listening out there don't know what I'm referring to when I'm talking about the bad blood, they got into a scuffle at their opening press conference, and Showtime did a great job of showing that multiple times in real speed and slow motion. So, man, Breezy, I'm gonna turn it over to you first. What did you love the most about this All Access episode on Canelo versus Caleb Plant? What did you learn about these fighters, and how much are you looking forward to this fight based on just the first episode? Because they still got another episode to release later this week.
Well, like you said, All Access, they're good at what they do, and what they did is they made me believe it. I know they're supposed to say certain things and do certain things, but in this one, I really feel it. I believe it. I'm like, he really doesn't like this guy. He's really going to take it to him.
They really.
I'll just throw this out there. I'm kind of pulling for Plant. That's my guy. But Billy Joe Saunders,
Breezy,
he was talking all the stuff.
I'm before you go any further, just so you know, and our listeners can hear it also. I'm kind of pulling for Plant too, man. I'm rooting for him. I like Plant. I like his story, but
yeah,
I don't want to cut your flow, sir.
That's not a pick. Yours. I'm just saying I'm pulling for him.
Yeah, it's not a pick.
I'm not picking. Yeah, I didn't throw that out there yet. But
too early.
With Billy Joe Saunders, he's kind of unstable to me. I'm not talking about his mental status. Maybe I am. I don't know. But but yeah, I didn't have a whole lot of confidence of where he would be at for the fight. But
yeah,
Plant, I got a whole different feel. I'm like, he's not playing around. He doesn't have a lack of focus or motivation. There's real bad blood. He got real. You can see the motivation on his face. You can see it.
You can see the bad blood.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's really there, and I really feel like Plant will be. I'm not saying he win or lose, but I think he'll be Canelo's toughest fight.
Yeah, I think it's up there for sure. I mean, I would say that Mayweather was, is his toughest fight. I don't think Plant will top that. I mean, you never know. I mean,
it'll be this toughest fight of anybody that I think he beat. Yeah, that's how I should rephrase it. It'll be his toughest fight of anybody I think Canelo beat.
Yeah. Because it's up there. I mean, Canelo Plant possesses phenomenal boxing ability, and Canelo has had trouble with people that have, finessed boxing skills, like Lara, Arislandi Lara. Breezy, go ahead and elaborate on that, because I don't even really. I feel like the last time we spoke about that fight, you had Lara by decision in that fight. Am I right?
Yeah. Absolutely. I don't really think it was a close fight, to be honest with you. Lara is the reason why I said Plant will be the toughest fight Canelo had of anybody that I think he beat, because I think he lost against Lara also, in addition to Mayweather. But it was, to be honest, like I thought Lara was more effective in that fight, but I do feel like he could have been a little bit more assertive. He'll land a punch or two and then move all the way to the other side. Make you move. Don't just give him that. But I think he landed more in a cleaner and effective punches anyhow. But with Plant, I think you know, he's not going to make that mistake. If he can be in a similar position to Lara, which I think something similar should be his strategy against Canelo. But I don't think he's not going to move quite as much, and that might be the difference. That would be my
Well,
game plan for him if I was coaching him.
actually, I'll come back to that, but I want to get Adonis's take first. Adonis, what'd you think of episode 1, All Access, Canelo versus Caleb Plant?
Man, like, you can feel Canelo. Like, Canelo usually does like the song and dance, says the right things, does the media. It seems like he really wants to get at Caleb Plant for this fight. Kind of like Breezy was saying earlier, Billy Joe Saunders, they had bad blood, but at the end of the day, it was kind of more Billy Joe Saunders didn't like Canelo, and Canelo was just like, okay, I'll go in and do my job. Whereas this one, I mean, he seems like he's really getting up for this fight. And I mean, how couldn't you? Now you got the bad blood. It's for undisputed up. Like, this is for all the marbles for Canelo Alvarez. And I think that's just going to push him that much more. If we're putting all of our cards on the table, I'll be honest with you. Like I said, grew up in a Mexican like boxing community. I'm a big Canelo guy, and I have been for a while. But I think Caleb Plant, like many people are saying, he'll be a tough fight. Stylistically, it's a hard matchup. And Caleb Plant, he's taking it seriously, man. Like, this is the first guy you look at, and he doesn't even seem kind of intimidated by Canelo's whole thing. And I think that's going to play a lot into him being willing to stand there and actually trade in the pocket and get out, get in, get out. Because a lot of guys like Billy Joe Saunders, you saw get in there. He's very out fighting style. He wasn't trying to get hit. And can you blame him? Like, one of the first times he got hit clean, it broke his eye socket. So you can see why guys don't want to take that power. But I don't think Caleb Plant's going to be that same way. He's got a lot of physical advantages on Canelo, the size, the reach. So yeah, I think All Access did a great job of showing how animus these two are at each other, and how Caleb Plant might be one of the first challengers to not back down from Canelo.
Animus. That's why we keep bringing you in as a guest. You know what I mean? And that's why this kid is going to be the next sports broadcaster. We appreciate that. We appreciate that, Adonis. Man, what can I say about this episode that you guys haven't said already? First and foremost, we know that Caleb Plant is not afraid to exchange with Canelo because he did it at the press conference.
Yes,
it's so funny that I'll keep it clean for just for you guys' sake out there on YouTube who may not be ready to hear a bunch of F-bombs. But man, it's kind of funny that this whole thing boiled over at the press conference due to one of my favorite words. Starts with an M, ends with the other. You know what I'm saying? Caleb kept saying MF to him, and for some reason that just set Canelo off. Like he just took it as disrespect. Like don't curse me type of thing. Almost like in the old school days. There was always somebody's house you couldn't curse in front of because their mother would come out there.
Yeah.
And curse you out. I know it's kind of ironic to be like, well, if I can't curse out here, why would you curse me out like that? I didn't even know you were. I'm sorry, I didn't even know you were on your porch. But Canelo just had that kind of vibe, like, oh, you're gonna curse me, okay, and pushed him, and they got into a little scuffle. Caleb Plant walked away with a cut under his right eye, and man. I don't know if you guys noticed, but before that press conference, I want to say Caleb Plant was somewhere around a plus 400 underdog. And then after that press conference, Caleb Plant became somewhere around a plus 800 underdog. Just because people saw how the first unofficial exchange went between these guys. One man walked away from the press conference without any wrinkles in his clothes, and the other one walked off with a cut under his right eye, even though it's a light cut, something that doesn't.
Wait, I gotta correct
or anything like that.
Canelo did have a little bit of. He actually did graze him. He had a little mark or something on his face. It looked like he slipped it, and he basically did. He didn't. He rolled with it, I guess. But he did have
a fingernail right on there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
something hit it. I don't know, and yeah, so. But
Man,
yeah, he
you know
still
what my favorite
nonetheless
part of
he
that
won the exchange. We
you
all
know what my
saw.
favorite part of that exchange was, Breezy?
What's that?
The fact that Canelo pushes him. He takes off his sunglasses when they do the face to face and then pushes him. And when he pushes him, he still had his sunglasses in his right hand. And then as Caleb Plant is coming back across the stage, you can see Canelo just smooth as ever, smooth like silk on glass, just tosses the glasses ever so slightly right behind him, right before he pulls back from Caleb swiping at him
He was ready.
and landed some counters. It was incredible. So I could see why the odds fluctuated the way they did. I will say this to the betting public, to the gamblers out there. Some good odds, man. If you're looking for a good deal,
It
let me tell
is.
you, man, Caleb Plant is not a plus 800 underdog. If you want good odds on a fight and you're looking for an opportunity to turn $100 into several $100s, if you got $100 to spare, it's not a bad idea to throw that on Caleb Plant because he's got a fantastic shot to win this fight. We'll see what happens. I'm not making any predictions right now. It's too early, and I just want to go ahead and say there's a lot of people out there that are kind of counting Caleb Plant out in the early stages, and it's really not fair. I think a lot of people don't. One of the things that I liked about All Access is it got people in touch with Caleb Plant's story, which is something that I've been aware of being a big fan of boxing. I actually got the pleasure of meeting Caleb Plant while I was in Las Vegas for the Broner Manny Pacquiao fight. You were there, Adonis.
Where was I at?
I was just walking through the lobby, and he was over there by the
Oh,
ring,
okay.
the little
Okay.
souvenir ring that they had in the lobby. And I went up to him and I just told him, your victory over Uzcategui, was inspiring and inspired me. And, I wish you the best. And it's funny because he kind of looked first like, when I walked up to him, like, who are you? You know what I mean? Because maybe he's not at that point in his career, he probably wasn't used to or not as used to fans coming up to him to talk to him. But he kind of looked at me like, "Whoa, hey, who, what do you want?" But I told him, your victory over Uzcategui, not only was it a great fight, it inspired me, very inspiring, and I wish you the best in your career. Big thing that inspired me about that victory was the fact that he made that promise to his daughter to become a world champion, and he did that, and he was able to take that IBF belt, bring it to a gravesite, and deliver on that promise. He lost his daughter Aaliyah at 20 months. My daughter is 20 months right now, so it's definitely one of the reasons why I'll definitely be rooting for him on fight night. And he just seems like a good, authentic dude. He seems like somebody I would vibe with on a personal level. So you have that. On the other hand, you have Canelo, and the funniest thing about the episode for me that I took away from it was, we've mentioned here how he beat Billy Joe Saunders and in devastating fashion. For those of you that don't know, in May of 2021, Canelo beat Billy Joe Saunders, I want to say via round 8 or after round 8 or something like that. It might have been in between rounds. But Billy Joe Saunders quit on a stool. He suffered a broken orbital bone. I want to say it was broken in 3 places.
I mean, it was bad enough to where he was considering retirement, so it was devastating, to say the least.
Yeah. So just landed a vicious uppercut on him, counter uppercut, and you could probably, if you got a set of good speakers in your house, you may even heard the crunch when the punch landed.
Yeah.
After that fight, 1 week after, this man got married. Canelo got married a week after that fight. Do you know how much confidence that takes to schedule a wedding 1 week after a huge title fight in May on Cinco de Mayo boxing weekend? Do you know how much confidence that takes? To know that your face is going to be okay for pictures and plan all that out. You got to plan a wedding, people. You have to plan it. You know what I mean? I know that Canelo is running around with different type of finances and everything, which probably makes planning things a whole lot easier, but it's still tedious and it's still something to be done. And regardless of what kind of role he had in helping plan the wedding and everything, he definitely had to be there a week later, and he definitely had the confidence to say, I'll be okay to be there even before the fight went down. That's impressive. That's impressive to me. They kind of covered, Canelo's new lifestyle with him being a married man, and it really looks like he's kind of, full circle with it at this stage in his career. He's been in there with some of the best. Obviously, we mentioned Floyd Mayweather earlier. We mentioned Arizona Lara, who was just a fantastic boxer. He just moved up to the middleweight division at 160 pounds. So we'll have to see what he does. He's had knockouts of the year here, there. He faced Triple G 2 times. We'll see if he faces him 3 times before they both hang it up. That's a huge boxing rivalry that we didn't even talk about. So he's been in there with everybody, and now he's a married man, and it seems like it's full circle for him. He's in his prime, and this, it's a great storyline for the fight. Is this young hungry lion, Caleb Plant, going to be able to upset arguably, I know, Breezy, I don't want to push your buttons because I know you're the president of the Bud
I understand.
Crawford fan club. But
I got it.
Arguably the number 1 pound for pound fighter in the sport. Could he be upset by this young hungry lion? It's happened in the past. Could it happen now? We'll have to wait and see. But man, that impressed me. The fact that Canelo got married a week after he defeated Billy Joe Saunders, that was impressive. Another thing that lets me know that it's going to be a great fight is the fact that Canelo gave Caleb Plant his props in this episode. He says, I know that this guy is a fantastic boxer. He's got a great jab, which I think Caleb Plant, I could make an argument that he's got one of the most educated jabs or just lead hand in boxing currently right now. He's got a fantastic jab. He uses lateral movement very well. And what Canelo said was he's got a great jab. He's fast. And he's a great combination puncher. So Canelo knows what he's getting into. He's done his homework on this guy. And that's how I know it's going to be a good fight, because they both know exactly what they're getting into. They both, you could see Andre Ward visit Caleb Plant in camp talking about movement. Said Andre Ward told him, at least this advice made the screen. When you're shadow boxing, don't stop moving your feet, just so you can condition your legs to move all 12 rounds if you needed to. If you need to move, boom, you could do it. Keep moving. Even if you just walking to the ring, shadowing and just doing different lines, doing different drills, footwork drills, just keep moving. Try to get your legs in the condition to move nonstop, 12 rounds, 15 rounds with no breaks. So you got Andre Ward, who's just a fantastic boxer, high ring IQ. The last man to get a gold medal for the United States in boxing is Andre Ward. So
legend.
He had a great rivalry with Kovalev. You know what I mean? That's something worth mentioning also, since we talked about rivalries. So you got him visiting Caleb Plant in camp. You got Canelo working with arguably somebody who's going to win Trainer of the Year this year in Eddie Reynoso, with, his team in Southern California, right around San Diego. It's going to be a great fight. These guys are going to go in there with a good amount of ring IQ and great skills, contrasting skills. You have a great boxer in Caleb Plant. I wouldn't necessarily say boxer puncher because I think that's more Canelo style is boxer puncher versus somebody that's more of a pure boxer in Caleb Plant. Man, it's a lot.
Hey,
it's a lot to unpack. It looks like there's real authentic bad blood, and I can't wait to see that one.
let me say I didn't make a prediction for this fight yet.
Oh, me neither.
But you know who did was Ward. And full disclosure, they're both American. Ward was, like you said, was in the camp with Caleb. So of course you would expect him to pick Caleb Plant to win. But
did he? He didn't?
He picked him by knockout.
He picked Caleb Plant by knockout?
Ward picked Plant by knockout.
Ooh, man, where'd you hear this?
I gotta look this up. I was sitting here trying to think. Where did I saw it on some site.
Okay, man.
I can't. I don't want to throw the wrong name out there because I look at a lot of sites.
Here's something that the listeners may not be aware of is I'm sure there's bad blood between Andre Ward's camp and Canelo's camp because there had been talks of maybe there being a matchup somewhere down the road between them two, or like a catchweight or whatever. Mm-hmm. That never happened. And Canelo faced Amir Khan in 2016. And when he faced Amir Khan, Andre Ward's trainer, man, his name is escaping me right now. Virgil
Hunter.
Hill, correct? Is it Hill? Virgil Hill.
Is it Hunter, I think.
Virgil Hunter? Yeah, Virgil Hunter. I'm sorry. Virgil Hill is an old boxer. Virgil Hunter. So Virgil Hunter was Amir Khan's coach for that fight. And he said, he got to talking that talk after the fight. He said, man, Amir Khan came up in weight to fight this guy. Canelo doesn't need to find smaller opponents from this moment forward. He needs to step up and face Triple G. So even after that fight, Andre Ward's trainer put more pressure on Canelo to face Triple G right after the victory over Amir Khan. So there's probably some bad blood between their crews. So I wasn't surprised to see Andre Ward in camp with Caleb Plant and trying to give him some pointers. It's another reason to tune in for this fight, November 6th? November 6th.
Yep.
Next month, 2 weeks, a little bit less than 2 weeks away, man. So plan accordingly. It's going to be a great fight. You won't want to miss it, and we will definitely talk more to you guys about it in the coming weeks. Moving on, we had a great fight this past weekend, Shakur Stevenson versus Jamel Herring, in what looked like it might be a rivalry fight because these two used to train together, and now the young lion, Shakur Stevenson, said, you know what? I want your belt, Jemele. And talked a little trash, got the fight, inked on the contract, talked even more trash. And man, Jamel Herring's people looked like after the press conference and the weigh-in, they looked like they wanted Shakur Stevenson on a silver platter, man. They wanted him served up on a silver platter. They were so upset at the way that, Shakur Stevenson went from friend to foe. They didn't appreciate it one bit. Yeah. But man, it was a great performance from Shakur Stevenson. He outclassed Jamel Herring and scored a 10th round TKO victory over the reigning, what was he? I want to say he was the WBO champion. The reigning WBO super featherweight champion at 130 pounds, junior lightweight, whatever you want to call that weight class, junior lightweight, super feather, 130 pounds. You got a new sheriff in town with Shakur Stevenson. He's now a champion, 2-division champion at a young age. And before the fight, I believe ESPN came out with a list of the best boxing talents currently under 25 pounds. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry, under 25 years of age. I'm sorry, nobody's under 25 pounds. Not even my 21-year-old daughter is under 25 pounds. So under 25 years of age, they put a list of the best boxing talents, and Shakur Stevenson was number 2, only behind Teofimo Lopez at number 1, which begs the question: after this weekend's performance, is Shakur Stevenson in your top 10 pound for pound list? And I'll turn it over to Breezy first. What do you think, sir?
Well, I already kind of felt this way, but you know, I always say I kind of rank when I rank my fighters, put together my list of pound for pound fighters. I do it a little bit differently than most people, I think, because uh, your resume, that's just a little part of it, you know. But that little part is the only reason why he wasn't in my town pound for pound before. I already felt like he was there, you know. But especially after the performance this weekend, I don't think I could name 10 fighters that I would favor over Shakur if they were to have a match. I really don't. And it's not, you know, like I said, it's not based on resume. If it was based on resume, he wouldn't be top 20, you know. But I look at what you
Mm.
bring to the ring and what's actually going to help you win. Experience does help, but it's there's so many things you can use that's just one thing. So
Yeah.
I feel like he has the very best defense in the sport right now. He's super sharp. He's quick, but he's not lightning. You know, he's okay. He's a decent puncher, but he's not dynamite. But he's just super sharp, super smart, and I think he's a problem for anybody. He didn't have a problem. You know, he was criticized for not being a finisher or being a born fighter. He he showed that he can do different things in the ring. You know, he was a little bit more aggressive through more combinations, and he got him out of there. You know, they stopped the fight at the end, and this was the best competition he's faced in his pro career. You know,
Yeah,
and he and
for
he
sure.
he made it almost look rehearsed. You know,
Yeah.
he was just that sharp. So yeah, I
Yeah.
definitely have him in my top 10. I don't have my list, my whole 10 in order just yet, you know, but not at the moment. I got to revise it again.
You
But
know what? Come end of the year, we'll definitely
yeah, we got to do that.
revise our list. Oh yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. Honestly, Breezy, there was one point in the fight. I got to agree with you on the quickness. There was one point in the fight. Jamel Herring went to the body with a right hand, and Stevenson caught it with his elbow. I'm sorry. It must have been I think it was a right hand. Stevenson caught it so quick with his elbow and returned like a left straight counter shot, super quick. I forgot what round it was. I want to say it was after 6, but very quick, very efficient in there, very impressive. If you know what you're looking at when you watch boxing fights on a skill basis, there's no denying this kid's talent level. Um, but
Yeah.
I'm getting too far ahead of myself. Adonis, what did you think about the fight? And does this performance put Shakur Stevenson into your top 10 pound for pound list?
Yeah, I mean, as far as skill goes, I think Shakur Stevenson's finally come out, especially in this last fight, and shown that defensive skill, just overall boxing ability, he's one of the best in the sport that we have today, just bar none. For me, my pound for pound, I'm a little more traditional with it. I think the politics of boxing, you can say certain guys are more talented until we see the matchups. I'm a little more hesitant to put guys over each other. So I think resume, for me at least, has a lot to do with it. And because of that, Shakur, he's great, just has not done enough yet. He's young though, I don't doubt that he will get into the top 10 pound for pound, top 5 probably. And heck, he could end up being the number
Yeah.
one day with the amount of skill he has. But at this moment right now, no, I don't think his resume warrants a top 10 pound for pound spot.
Okay, so we got one yes and one no. Look at that. All right. Um,
I
I'm gonna be the
understand that.
tiebreaker. I'm gonna be the tiebreaker, Breezy. Are you ready for this?
Where we at?
I don't think he's in the top 10, man, after this fight. There's no denying.
I thought
I
you was
don't
going
think.
to give me
Yeah, I agree
one.
with Adonis. I think
Yeah.
that he will be on the list soon, and he'll be at a certain point in his career, he'll definitely be in the top 5. He's that good of a boxer. He's got that talent. I just don't think he's the guy in those weight ranges, to be honest with you. Personally,
Mm-hmm.
in my in my pound for pound, Tank is in my top 3. He's the guy at that
Mm-hmm.
weight range for me, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Tank Davis is in my top 3. Um, One thing I will say about the fight, it was a great fight. A lot of people, um, especially even Tim Bradley at ESPN, who's calling fights now, former fighter, had a little bit of a rivalry with Manny Pacquiao, fought him 3 times. So he was critical of Shakur Stevenson recently in his victory over Nakathila earlier this year.
Yeah.
He just said Shakur Stevenson didn't do enough to get Nakathila out of there. He felt like he could have pressed, mashed the gas a little bit more and scored a knockout victory. But Shakur Stevenson never really came off of cruise control. He never really, you know, went pedal to the metal at all. And a lot of people, I didn't necessarily call it a boring fight, but a lot of people were around the web, whether it was, former boxers or just fans or people in the media. A lot of people called it a boring fight. And Stevenson went out there with a point to prove in this fight. And he proved it. He proved that he could definitely fight exciting fights. And he definitely did that against Jamel Herring. Not only was he, putting on the pressure, he was landing shots after he was landing head snapping, scoring shots every round in high numbers too. That's what people want to see. It's a fight that nobody could call boring. And credit to Jamel Herring. He definitely pressed the action a lot, especially after maybe like want to say the 5th round. After the 5th round, he started to press on a little bit more. And Andre Ward made mention that was supposed to be part of their game plan in Herring's corner, was to try to take Shakur Stevenson, who's a younger, not as experienced fighter, into deeper waters and see if they could pressure him into some sort of submission. But that never materialized. Um, Credit to Jamel Herring, though. Like I said, he kept coming forward and definitely pressing action to make you think that maybe the tide could change after the 6th round, but it never did. Shakur Stevenson, man, just beautiful skills. But honestly, this is a guy that he's trained with before. So sometimes you kind of say that a fight like that should be expected out of 2 guys who spent so much
Yeah.
time in the ring together. I would say that if he were to fight, in the future and put on the same type of performance, he probably could eke into the back end of a top 10. For me personally, I'm sure there are people out there right now that have him in the top 10 or even in the top 5. So,
What do you mean, like a dominant victory over, let's say, Valdez?
That
oh,
probably do it.
Yeah.
yeah, that'll
Yeah, but
do
that'll
it.
do it.
Bro, that's all it takes. Hey, that's not going to eke him into the back end of a top 10. That'll eke him right into the middle
Yeah.
of a top 10 conversation. He beats Valdez, especially in impressive fashion, for sure. That's the fight that he said he wants next.
He said that's the
Oscar, you
only
got
fight
nowhere else.
at
That's the
130
only
that he's
fight.
interested in right now.
And honestly, for ESPN, that's going to be, a pretty decently easy fight to make, just because
Yeah.
it's not like lightweight right now where you got all these competing, narratives and promotions. It's the fight to make right now, and ESPN, I think they're going to jump all over that, especially because Stevenson didn't take a whole lot of damage in that fight, So
Yeah.
we should probably be seeing that early second quarter of 2022.
One can only hope, but one thing that we can see that makes it easier is both of these guys are under the same promotional banner. And
Mm-hmm.
most of the times, if we're just using, quantitative legacy data, those fights get put together a lot easier than some of the other fights. So hopefully that
especially with
does
Bob
come.
Arum.
Yeah.
Hello, Bob. Yeah. So if there's any, if there's any hope that fight will happen, it's strong because they both fight on ESPN. They're both signed to Top Rank. They're both champions at 130 pounds. That would be a huge unification bout. It would be something that is pay-per-view worthy, and I think it could be a hell of a pay-per-view show. And if Valdez is a great boxer puncher, Shakur Stevenson is a great boxer, pure boxer. You can almost argue that he's a good boxer puncher, but it would be a fight to see that if he were to beat Valdez, no question, he's in the top 10. I want to say a lot of people have Valdez in the top 10 right now. So
Yeah, I've seen him in a few people's
Ring
top 10
Magazine,
list.
obviously ESPN has them and has him in their top 10. So yeah.
The only
sure.
the only other fight that would be interesting for me, really for either of them at 130, like right now, would be is if Gary Russell moved up to 130. I don't know what he's waiting for, to be honest, though.
Well, let's go ahead and talk about this too, because after his performance this weekend, I saw a lot of headlines out there where Shakur Stevenson name dropped Gervonta Davis and said that that's a fight that has to happen in the future. So, I guess the question is this: from 130 pounds up to 140 pounds, do all roads lead to Gervonta Tank Davis for a big matchup or a huge pay-per-view event? What do you think, Breezy? Oh, I'm sorry.
Absolutely.
Adonis, you look like you were stepping up to the mic. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, I'll
What were
try
you
to
going to say?
Yeah, I think earlier this year when Gervonta went up and beat Mario Barrios, I was talking about how that was maybe one of the best 3D chess moves he could have made because he's beaten everybody up to that weight class. So now he's the only guy out there going, hey, everybody else, come up here. Like, I'm the guy to do it against, especially because he's not a natural 140. He could probably be down 2 more weight classes if he really tried.
Yeah.
So when you look at somebody like Tank Davis, who's already beat everybody up there, of course all roads lead to him because, I mean, realistically, he's the biggest fight going up. And so when anybody at lightweight wants to move up, when Stevenson maybe goes to lightweight and then decides he wants to move up, there's already one guy who's been sitting up there at the top for a while looking down going, hey, I'm ready for you guys. And yeah, that's Gervonta Davis.
Yeah. Breezy, what do you think? Do all roads lead to Tank? It seems like Tank is the common denominator in a lot of, in a lot of showdowns between those weight classes. What do you think?
I do think all roads lead to him. For one, he's the biggest draw below welterweight. So if you wanna have a bigger money fight than you've had, he's the man. He's your man at 35, 40. I don't even want to say anything else, but yeah, in that weight range. But also, I have him as my number 2 pound for pound fighter. So I I don't see, obviously if somebody beats him, all roads won't lead to him after that. But I don't think anybody's going to beat him anytime soon. So if you want to be in the top spot, at least in my book, yeah, you got to go through Tank. At 35 or 40. I mean, he's not. He didn't take over 40.
No.
Josh Taylor. He's on paper. He's definitely the man at 40. But if he were to fight Tank, that would be
a huge
good
fight.
I don't expect it, especially not even next year. But if they did, that'd be a good, a good
huge
topic.
pay-per-view.
You know what I'm saying? Huge pay-per-view. And I think I would have to roll with Tank.
It's too early to call it, obviously, because they're not even in negotiations or anything. And I believe Josh Taylor's fight against Adonis, help me out here.
Jack Catterall just got postponed because Jack Catterall got injured. So they got to push that back.
Josh Taylor got injured from what I
Was it
heard.
Josh?
Yeah, it was Taylor.
Oh,
So it got pushed back to, I believe, February 2022.
Yeah.
yeah.
So their December fight is pushed back a little bit. To answer my own question, is Tank do all roads lead to Tank from 130 to 140? I would also push back a little bit on the 140 division and say that the roads lead to Josh Taylor there. But at the same time, Josh Taylor has name dropped Tank. So it seems as though the roads do lead to Tank because Tank, I don't recall Tank name dropping Taylor, but Taylor name dropped Tank. Or who knows? I don't know what order it went in. If Tank ever did name drop Taylor, I don't know
Maybe it
who
was the
said whose names
fans.
first. Yeah, it's a lot of these things are fueled by the fans, But that's a fight that I'd love to see. Josh Taylor versus Tank. I can't even really tell you who would win, but I know it would be a great fight. Same thing with 135. You would think that all roads would lead to Teofimo Lopez because he has all the belts. But the only fight I would really want to see after Lopez and Kambosos goes down, if Lopez comes out victorious over George Kambosos, the only fight I want to see is Tank. Him versus Tank. That's it for 135. I think that is the fight at 135. And then, who knows whether or not Tank still plans to fight at 130. I'm not even sure if he still has his title at
No,
130.
he gave
but
it up at 130.
he gave it up.
Mm-hmm.
But the interesting thing about Tank was that he had a piece of the WBA World Championship at 130, 135, and 140 simultaneously until he had to give it up. Like Breezy said. Yeah, it seems like on paper all roads don't lead to Tank, but his name is in all the conversations for all the biggest fights in those divisions. So it was interesting for me to see the headlines where Shakur was saying that he wants to face Tank in the future, and it almost solidifies that idea that he is the guy, because so many people drop his name. But in all honesty, aside from Tank, I think there's lots of people I'd love to see Shakur Stevenson in there. One, Navarrete, he just had a great fight against Joet Gonzalez, and man, oh man, I know I talked about Margarito's eye earlier, looking like something out of the Rocky Balboa prop book, or whatever you want to say. Did you guys see Joet Gonzalez's face after that fight?
Man, the war that man went through, and credit to Navarrete for staying in there, and credit to Gonzalez for staying in there, man.
Yeah.
But that's the kind of damage that you're only going to be able to take like that a few times in your career.
Yeah,
man. I think I prayed for. I know I prayed for him that night after the fight. I think I prayed for him in the morning too, man. It was brutal. The type of punishment that he took, and like you said, credit to him because he didn't have to keep taking it, but he did. And not only was he taking it, he was dishing it out too. It was a great fight. Lots of back and forth, even though it seemed like Navarrete was dominating in terms of winning rounds. It was a great fight. Lots of action.
I mean, honestly, it's going to get overshadowed because Wilder Fury just happened, but that's a fight of the year contender up there. Like, as far as fights that have happened this year, that's that's top 3, top 2. For some people, it could be your number 1, and I would be mad at it.
And Navarrete had a great fight against what was his name? Puerto Rican fighter at 126. Do you remember?
we talked about it.
Yeah, we did. I know.
I can't remember his name right now.
Oh, Adonis is on it. I could see it in his glasses.
Got a little research going on.
Yeah.
Pay our respects to the greats. Oh, Christopher Diaz.
Christopher Diaz.
Right.
I wanted to say Diaz, but I couldn't come up with the first name, so I didn't want to commit to it. So Christopher Diaz, they had a great fight, and that was a great scrap. It's probably something that would be mentioned in Fight of the Year, along with Valdez versus Burchelt and a few others. Tyson Fury versus Deontay Wilder, obviously. But man, oh man, I'd like to see Stevenson and Navarrete. If Navarrete is somebody who looks like he could easily make
Easily.
130. Easily. He's a huge 126-pound fighter.
And
So
strong.
I'd like to see that. I'd like to see him versus Gary Russell Jr. Obviously, Shakur Stevenson wants Valdez next. There's Tevin Farmer out there. Tevin Farmer is from Philadelphia. Shakur Stevenson is from New Jersey. It'd be a great tri-state area rivalry fight that could go down in some neutral territory like the Barclays in Brooklyn. And you keep it all right there in the tri-state. You get a lot of fans come out for that. So obviously, there's Tank in the mix. There's Teofimo Lopez in the mix. Devin Haney and Jojo Diaz. But Haney and Diaz are supposed to square off. Ryan Garcia is sidelined with a hand injury, so he's out for a while. But there's a lot of names out there I'd love to see Shakur Stevenson in there with. So, man, I'd love to. After this performance, one thing is for sure that's not debatable. I am looking forward to seeing what he does in his next fight. Speaking of next fights, did you guys see Mikey Garcia? I
Yeah,
know we just
man.
talked about Navarrete. So they both fought on the same weekend last weekend. Navarrete's fight also kind of probably got overshadowed because it was on a Friday, which is fairly uncommon, and it was late at night. I know it took place in San Diego, and I want to say they didn't step into the ring until
It was like 11, like
yeah,
Central Time, and I
yeah,
was like fighting to stay awake, and that's how good that fight was. Is I forgot how tired I was from watching that fight. I
yeah,
was like, damn, man, because I was
yeah.
falling asleep before that.
I was too, but I made it through the fight. So you had Navarrete versus Joet Gonzalez on Friday, and then you had Mikey Garcia versus Sandor Martin on Saturday on the Zone, and Martin from Spain pulled off a huge,
Huge.
huge upset victory and beat Mikey Garcia. A lot of people are out there saying that Mikey should just hang it up. I don't know, man. Boxing fans can be kind of brutal. So
Harsh.
I'm gonna ask you guys, and I'll turn it over to Breezy first. Is that an overreaction from boxing fans, or do you agree with them?
I
And
mean,
why?
I guess it comes down to why you fight. You can fight
Yeah,
just because you
right.
love fighting, or you can fight because you want to be the best. You want to get to the mountaintop. I think Mikey can forget about the mountaintop at this point. Just and I'm a Mikey Garcia fan. He peaked at number 4 on my pound for pound list once upon a time, but he's
Hmm.
a long way from there. I don't know if the passion is still there, and obviously, maybe it started because of his issues with his promotional company and all that. It just killed his activity, and he never really picked it back up. And now with the huge upset, it's like, oh, I was down and then I just got kicked. Like, what's the point now? But I mean, it could be a point. He could just love fighting. He could be one of those guys. Uh, but I mean, he could still. I don't expect him to beat any of the top guys, but he could still. I mean, he could be a gatekeeper.
I don't know. You know what?
Or at 140, he might not be that guy. He just stay at
This was at
140.
140, right?
Was it?
This fight was at 140, I believe.
No,
Yeah,
I thought
him
it was at
versus Sandor Martin.
147. I know
I
he. I
think
know
it might
after
have
the
been at
fight,
147.
It
after the
might have been a
fight, he
catch weight
said that
though.
he's just going to fight at 140,
Let's see.
and I'm like,
Oh,
okay,
oh, Adonis is on it already.
Yeah, man,
Ladies and gentlemen, you see why we love having Adonis on the show with us, and you see why I keep saying that this man is going to be a future sports broadcaster, man.
but yeah,
yeah. This fight was. Let's see. Yeah, it was at 147.
147. Okay.
Yeah,
yeah, but
Yeah.
maybe he can do some. Maybe he can make an interesting fight with I don't know, Progray or Taylor's. I don't know. Maybe not. I don't know. But he has to go back to the drawing board. I know that.
Yeah. That's the hard hitting truth right there is that Mikey Garcia is going back to the drawing board. Whether fans are saying he should retire or other fans are saying He still got left in him, a lot left in him. I'm sorry. Um, one thing is for sure, he definitely has to go back to the drawing board. Adonis, what do you think? Do you think the fans are overreacting by saying that it's time for Mikey to hang him up?
I mean, it's not time to hang him up for any like concerning reasons. It's more that people don't like seeing Mikey Garcia lose. Everybody loves, even if you don't like Mikey Garcia that much, you can still respect him for what he's done, especially after the Errol Spence fight and what he did there. He just seems kind of lost right now. His career, he doesn't seem like he has a whole lot of trajectory in like where he's planning on going. He seems like he's kind of just fighting to fight. The Sandor Martin fight, taking it at welterweight after the time off. He hasn't been the most active lately. It's not the best career decisions you can be making. A drop back down to 140 that might really reinvigorate him. See, he can probably get some good fights down there, be competitive, like Breezy was saying, kind of a gatekeeper. But if he's still fighting to be the best in the world, and he's gonna not drop down to 140, and he's gonna stick around at welterweight, it's just I don't see the point. You know what I mean? He'll make his money. Hey, if that's what he wants to do, he can do that. But if you're boxing for to be a great boxer and to be remembered like legacy wise, I don't know how much more he really wants to do damage to his career by doing these welterweight stunts and coming up short.
Yeah. I can agree that, well, one thing I'll say is I think it's an overreaction that people are saying Mikey should retire. It's like
Probably seeing people saying Wilder should retire.
Yeah, same thing with that. Wilder has lost to one guy. It does not mean he needs to retire. There's a lot of fights left out there. The only reason why you could make a stronger argument for Deontay Wilder retiring is because he's in his mid-30s, which, obviously nowadays people have extended their careers into their 40s, a lot more commonly.
Especially heavyweights.
But at the same time, did you see how bad he broke his hand in the fight?
Yeah.
It's a horrible break. So, this is not the first time he's broken his hand. With great power comes great injuries. And he's broken that hand a number of times, and I'm sure he's broken it just as badly. If you look at his hand, you can see the scars through the tattoos. His whole, both of his arms are just covered in tattoos all the way down to his knuckles. Even with the tattoos, you could see the scars all over his right hand. I want to say even up to his forearm right here. You could see a big incision in the middle of his forearm. He's had a lot of repair work done on that cannon of a hand that he has. So that's one thing that I could see, pushing Deontay closer to retirement is the type of injuries that he's had and him being at his age. But for Mikey Garcia, I don't think it's something that he needs to I don't think this performance warrants, calls for his retirement. If anything, it just means that he needs to find a weight class and stick with it. Because it doesn't seem like welterweight is working out. I know that he went up there for a big payday and a good showdown with Errol Spence Jr. Breezy, you were at that fight, right?
Yeah, I was at that one.
So, it was packed, right? So, the payday was there.
Yeah.
So,
talk about a quiet section. just like Adonis was talking about, Marquez and Pacquiao section. It's quiet.
Yeah,
it got pretty quiet, and it's crazy because this is Dallas. Spence from DeSoto, right? He's basically from Dallas, but a big portion of that crowd was quiet because it wasn't really
on cowboy hats.
It was pretty one sided.
They had on the same cowboy hats that Mikey rocks to the ring. Yeah. So. Yeah, for sure, man. Mikey's got star power. He's got a lot of draw. Before this fight, he was rumored to be in negotiations to get the fight with Manny Pacquiao, and that's probably why he's stuck around at 147, and probably why he's got so much ring rust is, the efforts that his team put forth to try to secure that fight for him, and it didn't work out. And honestly, maybe the problem that I see in Mikey Garcia is maybe just a lack of motivation, maybe the frustration of not getting the big fight with Pacquiao, or the frustration from, you know, maybe not making welterweight a good home for him in his career yet. I will say this, man: if you got to go back to the drawing board, it's a good thing to go back to the drawing board with Robert Garcia as your big brother. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Um, who better to have in your corner than one of the best trainers in boxing, who's also a family member? So I think it's an overreaction. I'm still looking forward to what Mikey's going to do in the sport. I would have to agree with Breezy that um, being the best pound for pound is probably going to be behind Mikey, but that you know very few people make it to pound for pound status, if we're being honest.
yeah,
Breezy
that's
has Roy on his wall. Mayweather made it there. Um, Even a great boxer like Andre Ward, a lot of people never really gave him that number one pound for pound spot. I personally did after he beat Kovalev in the rematch. I think it was settled for me then that he was the best one, and then he left after that fight. He left the game. So um, if he reached pound for pound status at the number one spot on everybody's list aside from just mine after that fight, it was short lived. So there's a lot of people that never reached that, and there's no shame in that. He's still got a lot to fight for. I think it's just up to him to decide what he wants to do. But I would say that the ring rust didn't look good on him in this fight. But at the same time, man, we got to give credit to Sandor Martin, because he put on a hell of a performance, and he looked like a guy that's tough for a lot of people to beat. Um, so we'll see.
so
We'll see
so
what Mikey does,
basically
man. There's a lot.
basically what
There's
you're
a lot out
saying.
there.
Basically, what you're saying is like not everybody can be the pound for pound guy. So like, not everybody could be LeBron or Jordan, but uh,
He'd
you
be a
could be
role
a
player.
Melo. Maybe you could.
Yeah. Hey,
You know
man,
what
let
I'm
me tell you
saying?
something. Breezy, you're around San Antonio right now, right?
Yeah, I'm
Hey,
in
man.
San
So
Antonio.
you are in San Antonio. So
Hmm.
if the Lakers go to town and LeBron's there, you would love to go and see LeBron play, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, who? So you got him, you got Kevin Durant. Like those are your number ones in the league. Let's just say we go away from the top guys and we say Damian Lillard's coming to town, who is a top guy, but just I don't think he's in anybody's number one uh, in the argument for number one on anybody's list or estimation. Are you going to go to that game if you could secure tickets, or are you going to be like, nah, I'm good on that?
I mean, I'm probably not gonna cancel any plans to make that happen. But yeah, I go. Yeah, I'm a fan.
Man, if your lady steps through the door with 2 tickets and she says the Spurs are playing the Trailblazers, look me in my face right now and tell me you're not excited.
I'm there. She
There you
got it.
go.
Oh,
See?
I'm there. I'm not wasting
Yeah.
no tickets. I ain't.
I
So
will say
Mikey, I
the
mean,
issue with Mikey doing this though, like when you're that kind of a name and you're kind of on the downslide a little bit, the fact that people are excited to see you, that can put you in some dangerous positions, man.
Yeah,
Because
true.
you become the guy that people beat to become the guy, and
yeah, that's true too.
that's kind of the issue. Like if Mikey hangs up at welterweight, there's guys that like if Boots Ennis getting a win over Mikey Garcia, that would be a name. And I would not like that fight for Mikey
Yeah.
Garcia at all. You know what I mean? But it
No.
would be a great name for Jerron Ennis to get on his resume right now and be like, oh, he
Yeah.
beat Mikey Garcia,
Hmm.
and it would put him in that next like little like status of this is a name guy we had to fight against. So if you're Mikey Garcia and you're hanging around like that, you got to be real careful about what you're doing if you're not 100% in this thing.
And the other
Yeah.
downside that I thought you were going to say to being able to get those fights, even though you're kind of declining, not only are you in position to fight the guys that's up and coming, that's dangerous, that people don't want to see yet, but you might also be able to get into a fight with the top guys that you're not on that level anymore. You might, what I'm saying, like, I don't know, let's say, I'm not saying Keith Thurman is at the top, but if
He
he
was at a point.
to
So
turn back the clock, I mean, we haven't really seen him decline like that, have we? I mean, he's inactive, but He only lost to Pacquiao, and that was a close fight.
Mm-hmm.
So like
Yeah.
he could end up in a fight with Keith Thurman, and I don't think that would be good for Mikey at this point.
I would say that I don't think welterweight is good for Mikey whatsoever.
Yeah.
I just don't think he really has the size for it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Even since the time that he's faced Errol Spence up until now, I really haven't seen him fill out into a welterweight body at all. So I would say he could make a home at 140. And who's to say he wouldn't give Josh Taylor a run for his money? He could be a fight away from getting in there with Josh Taylor and becoming the undisputed champion. Let's say he did fight Regis Prograis and had a great performance against Regis Prograis, came out victorious. People would want to see that. People would want to see Mikey versus Tank. There's a lot of things that he could do at 140. Josh Taylor, Tank, whoever. And since I brought up Josh Taylor became undisputed by beating another one of Robert Garcia's fighters. So it would almost be the Garcia Boxing Academy's chance at redemption against Josh Taylor. So that would be a great fight all on its own. So I don't think Mikey's done. I don't think he needs to hang it up. I just think he needs to take some time to figure out what he wants to do in there. And once he finds that purpose or that calling, I think we're going to see some great fights from him in the future. So,
yeah, and he might have taken a step back, but I don't like he can. I don't think he's beyond rejuvenation. You know what I mean? Like if he
man, when you
fight
fighting
a big win, I wouldn't be like totally surprised.
When you fighting the Robert
Zab
Garcia
Judah did
Boxing
like 3 times
Academy, man, you definitely have a good shot at rejuvenation.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, man. What did you say about Zab Judah?
I said Zab Judah got rejuvenated like 3-4 times in his career. He's like, oh, I'm done. Oh no, I'm back. I'm better than ever. Have a good win. Oh no, I'm done. Oh nope, I'm back. So
yeah.
How old is Mikey Garcia? He's like what, 30?
Adonis is on it. Adonis, I don't even think I want to say he'd probably be like 29, 28, something like that.
Oh, he's a little older than we thought.
Oh,
what?
Yeah, man, he's 33.
Oh, 33.
Which down at those weights,
that's not
I think it's his career. He's had this much like spacing towards like this back half. It's not, especially at the lower weight classes. 33 years old, seeing this kind of decline. It's not the best look, that's for sure. Fans probably did overreact, but I'm not surprised at the response to this fight by any means.
Yeah. Again, I'll chalk it up to ring rust, and we'll see what happens in the future. But I feel like we're all giving a little. We're all kind of in shock that Mikey's 33. Man, okay, well,
just ever so slightly changes things, but
yeah, right.
What we said still stands, but just not as strongly. But it's still there.
Not as strong.
He can still rejuvenate his career. It's not old, but it's just
and he's still got phenomenal boxing talent. He didn't lose to somebody who can't fight either. We got to say that Sandor Martin put on a hell of a performance, basically putting Spain on the map for the night. In terms of boxing, won a great fight, and I'm sure after a performance like that, there was a lot. There were parties going on in the streets of Spain. It was a hell of a performance on a big world stage. He earned it. Mikey didn't just give it away. That guy really earned it. He really earned it. So that's another reason why I think it's an overreaction from fans is because they're, just because you haven't heard of Sandor Martin does not mean that he doesn't possess phenomenal boxing ability. Like Adonis said, does that mean Sandor Martin would beat Boots, or would Mikey fare well against Boots? Probably not. Boots is a guy who I think could take over the welterweight division. He's 5'10". He's a huge welterweight. And devastating knockout power. The only thing that's lacking so far for Boots is, the deep resume. But with the type of power that he has and the stature that he has in that division, I'm sure it's not easy to get guys in the ring with him. I'm sure Mikey Garcia isn't in a hurry to sign up for that. Neither would be Sandor Martin, but we'll see. It was a great performance by Sandor Martin, and for that reasons, I think Mikey still has something to give. I wouldn't be opposed to seeing a rematch. You never know. Some of the best rematches come from unexpected victories like this. And
You know what could
I wouldn't.
change a lot of people's reaction saying he should retire? What if let's say Sandor Martin had a fight against another big name and pulled off another upset?
Yeah,
We'll view this fight differently. Right now, he just lost to a nobody, but after that, okay, we got to really start respecting this guy Martin.
you know what? Because of that, Breezy, let's go ahead and wrap this up on one last question. Is there anybody else in the welterweight division that you could see Sandor Martin pulling off the upset victory against? Adonis, same question. It's tough, isn't it?
I
See, dude, okay. Sandor Martin fought a great fight. Don't get me wrong. But it was still a very close fight. Like it was a razor thin decision for Sandor Martin against Mikey Garcia. So I think that plus Mikey's ring rust. Sandor Martin's a great fighter. He'll give some guys some hard outs, but I don't really see him making a ton of waves in the welterweight division.
yeah, I agree with that, but I'll say if he can pull off an upset against a bigger name than himself, if he can, maybe Danny Garcia. That could be an interesting fight. Or maybe he can go for one of these young guns that's got a little buzz that's not Ennis though, or probably not Ortiz either.
Yeah, say Ortiz probably ain't the guy either.
Maybe I just lost his name, Connor Ben. Maybe that could be
Yeah,
interesting.
good
That
point.
wouldn't be bad.
Yeah, I'd love to see that. Conor Ben fights on the zone too, and this fight took place on the zone, so I wouldn't mind seeing that at all. Um, Danny Garcia is another person that good good call, Breezy. That you never know. You never know with the type of skills that Sandor Martin has and put on display against Mikey Garcia. There's
Right.
you got an argument there.
I would say it's
He could.
a very clear outcome in that fight.
Yeah, and there's a few other welterweights that are still kind of in prospect mode that are ranked in a few people's top 10, like the guy from Lithuania that I'm about to butcher his name unless Adonis helps me. Stetionis or
Oh yeah, no, I'm not helping with that one. Sorry, buddy.
first name starts with Imantas Stanionis. I'm sure I'm butchering this.
Yeah.
Sorry, champ. Don't come after me. Sorry. But him, like you never know. He could pull off an upset against one of those type of rising prospects. So, and that like Breezy said, that would kind of silence the critics that say Mikey should hang it up. So you never know, man. And at the end of the day, seeing upsets is exciting in boxing. So I'm all for it. In a couple weeks, we got Caleb Plant versus Canelo Alvarez, and just think about how exciting that would be if Caleb pulled off the upset. It would probably be the biggest upset of this year.
Yeah, definitely.
And I
definitely.
feel like we've definitely had a few so far this year. So, man, I think that's it for tonight. Adonis, thank you for joining us. You have any closing remarks?
Just be ready for next month, guys, because we're gonna be here and it's gonna be fantastic to watch. Boxing's been heating up this year, And we're about to get a nice little good end of the year up to a Christmas present with boxing. So be ready.
Yeah, December stack too. You got Tank fighting in December, and a few other fights. Lomachenko's coming back in December. Lots of fights to go down. Breezy, any closing remarks, my brother?
Well, the same as always. I was talking to somebody the other day. You can really kind of sniff out the casuals because they say, "Oh, I haven't followed it since this guy retired or that guy or this era." And I tell them, "Look, man, if you're a real boxing fan, you understand there's more talent in boxing right now than there's ever been at any one point. So, like welterweights, that's always a loaded division. Sometimes you got like a few middleweights, lightweights. There's a lot of loaded weight classes right now, and if
Yeah,
you're ever gonna, thinking about boxing or becoming a fan or whatever, tuning in, you know, now's the better time than
it's a
any
great
time
time.
in the past, and it's only looking up from here, to be honest. So tune
Yeah,
in, be entertained, learn something.
absolutely. Amen, champ. And honestly, like you were saying about the casuals, you know, I'm gonna go ahead and say this. If you're a real fan of boxing, your love for the sport of boxing should supersede your fandom for any one particular fighter. Um,
Absolutely.
on my closing remarks, I'd love to give send my congratulations and salute Antoine Cobb of Inglewood, Chicago. He fought on the top ranked card over this weekend and scored a devastating first round knockout
That was
victory
nasty.
in his professional debut. Good things to come, man. We wish you the best. Also, Breezy, did you see that Antoine Cobb has Montel Griffin in his corner?
Oh, does he?
I know you being one of the biggest Roy Jones fans. I know you know
Yeah,
Montel Griffin. I didn't know Montel Griffin was from Chicago. You knew that?
yeah. I play ball with him.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go.
Yeah.
So Montel Griffin, keep up the good work with Antoine Cobb. Antoine Cobb, very inspiring story. If you're looking for some motivation and you don't know where to find it, Google Antoine Cobb from Chicago, amateur boxer turned pro. Read about him and get inspired. This is the Hard Hitting Truth. I'm HB alongside my brother Breezy with Adonis, and we'll catch you next time when we got a little bit more to talk about. We'll catch you next week to talk a little bit more about Canelo versus Caleb Plant because it's going down next weekend. Episode 2 of All Access Canelo versus Caleb Plant goes down this weekend. We'll be back to talk to you more about that. Until then, protect yourself at all times. Roll with the punches. Breezy, what happened to peace?
Peace. There it is.
Later.